it took a lot of hard work and a lot of effort to get where we are today, where for the current year, it will be our last district engagement, although we are still having two outstanding provinces, that is KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, that we will have to do cartwheeling before the 8th of March next year. Now, I want us to start with our meeting, and I will request that we observe a moment of silence for prayer or meditation before we continue with our event. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone that is here. We will start our program, and the unfortunate part is that we got an apology from the speaker, Ms. Helen August, and she actually indicated that the chairperson of the Women's Caucus in the Eastern Cape Legislature will be doing the welcoming address. But before we go there, let me just give due recognition to the members that is on the platform. I've seen from the EFF, Ms. Brenda Matabula, as well as Mrs. Honorable Lutuli, and also from the ANC, we have seen Ms. Musta and also Ms. Lydia Mushodi. We are expecting the chairperson of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus in Parliament to be part of the people that will be attending our event, Ms. Kate Bilamkulu, Honorable Bilamkulu. So I'm sure she will be joining us later. But with that said, let me then now hand over to Honorable Fanta Pukiwe to do the welcoming address. She is the chairperson of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus in the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature. Honorable Pukiwe.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Honorable members, delegates to the NSOP, representatives from women's organization, distinguished guests, from the director, who is our Deputy Chairperson of the NSOP. Our speaker in Eastern Cape, in her absence, distinguished guests, it is with great sense of pride and gratitude to welcome all the delegates, representatives and legislators to the historic and important second session of 1994 Women Charter Review in the Eastern Cape, which was adopted at the dawn of our democracy. The adoption of the Women Charter in 1994 was the realization of a long protracted struggle for realization of affirmative, which was adopted at the dawn of our democracy, action of equal rights for women of this country. For example, the historic Women's March of 1956 is one of the political monuments which laid the foundation to the adoption of the Charter in 1994. We are very proud that after 25 years since the adoption of the Charter, the democratic institution such as National Assembly, through the National Council of Provinces, is taking stock of the 25-year journey traverse, reflecting on achievement and shortfalls of the Women Charter. The journey we have taken as a country since 1994 has been full of pitfalls and milestones. Over the years, it has been proven to be more difficult and challenging for many women in South Africa, particularly for women living in under-resourced areas such as villages, townships. The continued killing of women and children throughout the country validates the importance of reviewing the current Women Charter to strengthen the laws and rights, which would also address the scourge of violence against women in this country. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, The preamble of the Women's Charter for Effective Equality states that, open quote, we require society to be recognized and its institution to be restructured to take cognizance of all women. In particular, women should have full opportunity and access to leadership positions and decision making it at all levels and in all sectors of society. Therefore, as we review laws currently in place in order to identify gaps in existing legislation, it is important to note that the Municipal Structures Act implies that, open quote, every party must seek to ensure that 50% of the candidates on the party list are women, and that women and men candidates are evenly distributed through the list. Yet, till this day, majority of political parties still have a very poor representation of women, maybe because the clause says they seek. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, this is a struggle we are going to wage for some time, and we undertake a review of systematic weaknesses in the national gender machinery. It is imperative to stress the unity of all women and significance of strong women organization in the struggle of equality. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the strengthened demands of the Women Charter should treble the conscience of ignorant and the woke child care of women alike to give meaning to the call of liberation struggle. Our stalwart way to the Mama Dora Tamane, when she said, you have to walk, speak, we have no school, speak, we have to run like chickens from the vultures, speak, we must free ourselves. Men and women must share housework. Men and women must work together in the home, in the world. I open the door for you. You must go forward. It is not worth that Women Charter has recorded commendable success since its adoption in 1994. Private and public sector institutions are now starting to embrace the notion of equality, appointment of women into leadership position. For example, the appointment of women in position of responsibility in both private and public sector, a practice rarely used before the adoption of this charter. In the provincial legislature, we have appointed the first woman to the parliament, has also selected the first woman to the position of Auditor General of South Africa. This implies that women are now recognized on their contribution and no longer overlooked based on their gender. The recognition of customary marriages, amended, passed by the Parliament in June this year, is another progressive step of addressing unjust practices, laws infringing on women's rights, and put an end to years of unfair discrimination against women who entered in the polygamy marriages prior to the enactment of the 1998 recognition of customary act. We owe these times to our heroines on, on whose shoulders we stand today. The courageous gallants of women in the caliber of Mama Charlotte Matoke, Sophie de Bruyn, Lillian Diedrichs, and many stalwarts who have advanced the cause of emancipation of women from patriarchy, granting equal rights to women should ring alarm bells as we undertake this process. And remember that to advance and liberate women, we need to be cognizant of what she said. Is it open quote? If you can rise, bring someone with you. I hope the outcome of this review process will help us uplift and empower women more. As the Eastern Cape Legislature, we welcome and support the Women Charter review process because we believe that making assessment and identifying weaknesses in the current charter will help us and to strengthen existing laws. This empower and affirm the equal role of women in this country. On behalf of the Speaker of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, I welcome you all and wish this gathering a success namkelekile eMpuma Kapa. I thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Enkosi ma'am. We feel really welcome to Mpuma Koloni. Let me also just reflect a little bit on the road that we have traveled so far and contextualize our event as we are continuing. We are acknowledging the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly as well as the Speaker of the Provincial Legislature in their absence, because they are pretty much, very much part of our program. Executive mayors, members of parliaments, representatives of States SA and the Commission on Gender Equality, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to start first by quoting the president of the ANC Women's League, Comrade Batabile Dlamini, when she said to me, I believe you are actually initiating the review of the Women's Charter. Never forget that in the drafting of the Women's Charter, it was done by a coalition of women. There was no political party, there was no race or class. It was just women that came together to begin to think and to ponder about how we are going to make sure that in the CODESA process, the issues of women doesn't fall through the cracks. I feel quite inspired by that, because we have actually noticed that in the process, we had non-partisan approach with each and every non-governmental, community-based, and everyone was part of this process. When I said it last week and I'm saying it again, when we started this process, we never realized that it was such a massive project. But in the realization thereof, we are going to continue to make sure that more women participate in this process, because each one of us, activists and individuals, have a contribution to make. We are all entitled to expect that when the revised charter is tabled, we shall be judged as having been joint architects in the making of a just and equal society that is free from women's oppression and inequality. The act of leadership, which we are all called upon to exercise today, is the management of change through robust conversations of the past and how these impact our present realities. As a collective gathered here, we ought to take the baton and the legacy left behind by our forebears, as was mentioned by the previous speaker, who in 1953 decided amongst themselves that the time had come to discuss the formation of a national women's organization. And that led to the formation of FEDSO, and we are always reminded by history that South African women, they did attempt to make sure that they establish a national broad-based women organization. And that women's organization was the precursor of the Women's Charter. So we even saw during the negotiations, like I already said, I was reminded by the president of the ANC Women's League that a women's coalition was formed in order to strengthen the demand for gender justice. The output of that protracted process led to the 1994 Women's Charter for Effective Equality. It was inclusive and it was premised on the foundations and precepts of the 1954 Women's Charter. So this charter, as the backdrop in 2019, marked 25 years since its adoption. This charter for effective equality provides both scope and context for the review and analysis of the entire women's rights regime. The 2019 Women's Parliament hence initiated strategic discussions in the Sixth Parliament around all matters of policy, legislation, and structural arrangements that pertain to women empowerment in South Africa. The district review sessions are therefore specifically undertaken to take stock and assess the women's rights regime in its entirety including all policy and legislative instruments in place, while identify policies and laws that require our focus for amendment. The review processes will also assess the efficacy of structural arrangements in place, particularly as they pertain to the national gender machinery, gender budgeting processes, and related matters. We might sound repetitive, but if you repeat something, people will realize that you are very serious about it. As we undertake the review process, we are also deliberately engaging the local and provincial spheres of government in order to ensure that the salient issues that emerge from our discussions are attended to. We are embarking on this process based on the premise that the attainment of a democratic society can only have full and deeper meaning if it is accompanied by significant progress in the struggle for the emancipation of women. With this process, we also seek to do away with weak forms of coordination and collaboration within and across spheres of government and the broader NGO movement. We seek to forge a broad front of women's formations and organizations in the forefront of the struggle against patriarchy and gender-based violence. We seek to decolonize society's thinking. We seek to deconstruct the ideas that entrench patriarchy and begin to reconstruct a new way of thinking about gender equality as a norm, using the Women's Charter as a benchmark. Honorable members, distinguished guests, as Parliament, we are fast-tracking the legislative process of the three bills that was also mentioned by Honorable Bokiwe, introduced by the President, and we are happy to announce that we consider them to be very crucial bills. We hope the three bills, which are the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, the Criminal Law Amendment Bill, and the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill, will change the landscape in terms of how violence against women is dealt with. All the three bills aim to solidify how the courts, law enforcement, and government departments work together to fight gender-based violence. Delegates, allow me to once more welcome you to this platform which seeks to genuinely transform women's status in society for the better. Thank you very much. And before we continue, I just want to apologize for the Finance and Fiscal Commission. They have been with us throughout this process, but unfortunately, they have to excuse themselves because tomorrow they must do 2 presentations before Parliament. And you know that anyone can be summoned to Parliament and no one can just willy-nilly not go to address Parliament. So they are busy with the preparations, and that is the reason why today they will not be joining us. But they have joined us last week, and some of the members that have been there know that they made a very, very good input to the effect that in the welcoming address, I could hear that Honorable Fanta, I forgot the surname now, my dear comrades, she mentioned the issue of the Structures Act. That was also the Systems and the Structures Act and all the different legislature that they actually showed us that need amendment to make sure that it conform to the issue of gender equality. So we are going to continue with our program, and as usual, we will request Mr. Neil Roux of Stats SA to do his presentation. Unfortunately, the font of my phone is very small. Neil and Pille and Brille is with me now, so I cannot really read now the presentation. So, but I know you will be, as you have been doing throughout this process, you will be assisting us with your input. Over to you, Mr. Roux. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Let me just quickly share the screen with everybody. Share and play. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We've been asked to do a presentation today like we've done previously. But I think today's presentation is on the most districts we've ever done. We're doing 5 districts in the Eastern Cape, Joe Kwabi, OR Tambo, Sarah Baartman, Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality, as well as the Alfred Nzo district. As we've done previously, we start out with a broad background. And this is, of course, where we're standing in terms of South Africa's position in the world, population-wise. South Africa has got a population, as estimated by mid-2020, that was July this year, of about 59.6 million people. That makes us, coincidentally, the 24th largest country in the world in terms of population size. If you have a look at where the Eastern Cape stands in particular, we see that the Eastern Cape, with a population of about 6.7 million people, is considered the 4th largest province in South Africa. And that is just behind the Western Cape, with a population of 7 million. These two provinces, of course, closely linked in terms of migration, particularly out-migration from the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape. When we have a look at the distribution of the population, I'm sorry, I just want to remove this screen here. If we have a look at the distribution of the population within Eastern Cape by district, we find that the green ones are the ones that we're looking at today. By far, the largest percentage of the population is in the OR Tambo district, which takes about 1/4 of the total population, 23%, which is followed by Alfred Nzo with 12%, and Buffalo City also 12%, and then the two smaller ones, Sarah Baartman and Joan Krabi. In terms of population distribution by gender, we find, and this is quite common in South Africa, that about, in terms of the total population, about 47% of the total population are male, compared to about 52% or 53% of females. This is perhaps a bit exaggerated in the Eastern Cape because of the large out-migration, but this, and this you'll probably find if you have a look at the country, there are certain districts with a slightly less pronounced female dominance in the population. Looking at the particular districts, we find that distribution is perhaps very similar across all districts, except perhaps if you go down to the very bottom, where we're talking about Alfred Nzo district municipality, where only 43% of the population were male, 44% of the population were male. And then if you go up to Chris Hani and Sarah Baartman and so on, you can see there's quite a difference between the different districts. On a whole, I think this is also representative, of course, of the out-migration that we all know is happening from the Eastern Cape to other provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, the Western Cape, and even Gauteng. Another important thing which we have to look at when we look at the population structure of any area, be it the province or even the country, is of course the demographic profile. Now, this slide shows the demographic profile basically broken down into 3 areas. The one is your elderly population, 60 years and older. Then we're talking about children, which is essentially 0 to 15 years. And then we're talking about your youth and adult population, which is essentially your working age population, which is 15 years to 59 years. Now, the interesting thing about the Eastern Cape is that it's got the highest percentage of elderly population, and I would say 11.4% of the total population were older than 60. Now, that's much higher than the average for South Africa, and also the single highest of all the provinces. If you have a look at children under 15, you find that 36.6% of the total population were children. So again, it's higher than the average for South Africa. It's slightly lower than Limpopo, but it starts to tell us a story of a lot of children being raised by elderly people, perhaps. And this is also emphasized when you have a look at the percentage of youth and adults, which is only 52%. Again, much lower than the 62% for South Africa. These youth and adults, of course, that are not there have most probably, again, been migrated out to other provinces to look for work and other opportunities, maybe to attend education. So in general, we're sitting with a population of a relatively large elderly population and also a relatively large child population, with relatively little compared to the rest of the country in the middle. Now, these people, of course, all lived in households, and this slide actually shows us how the household distribution, how the population is distributed in terms of households. You'll find here that 53.1%, and that's 1/3 of all children, lived with neither their mother or their father. This is by far, as you can see in the slide, the highest percentage any particular province. A further 42% live with only their mothers, and probably about 1/5 of children live with both their parents. Now, this is clearly indicative of a population in which a lot of children lives with either extended family members and perhaps with grandmothers, whereas the parents themselves have, again, migrated out elsewhere to look for income. And this will also be emphasized when we look later at the source of income for households in Eastern Cape itself. When we have a look at the impact of households, and particularly of headship in households, we find that in Eastern Cape, and that's the second bar from the top, just below Limpopo, we find that 48.9% of female-headed households did not have a single person in the Eastern Cape, did not have a single person that was employed. Now that's compared with only about 1/3 of male-headed households, 32.9%. Again, re-emphasizing the fact that female-headed households are much worse off than their male-headed counterparts. And if you compare that to the South African average, which is the third last bar, the one in blue, you find that the situation in Eastern Cape is much worse than the average, and it's also second worst after the Limpopo. Now, this is also then, of course, reflected in the fact that about 59% of the Eastern Cape population, rather, is considered poor based on the lower bound poverty line. It shows you that the lower bound poverty line reflects the amount of money that's necessary to buy the necessary food as well as other necessities. And this is calculated at about 840 rands per person per month. Now, this is just a slide to show that this 840 rands per person per month, of course, changes over time with inflation. And it started at about 370 rands per person per month in 2006. It is increased to the 840 rands per month level that we are talking about today. Now, importantly here, the lower bound poverty line is the middle pie graph. Important here is to reflect in terms or to compare it to the South African average, which you can see the South African average is only about 40% of population poor. That shows, therefore, that the population in the Eastern Cape are much poorer, significantly poorer than that for South Africa as a whole. And that's across all three of these measures that we're using. If we're looking at the upper bound poverty line, for Eastern Cape, we would be about 73% of the population would be considered poor, compared to only about 55% of the population of South Africa. So a significant percentage of population in the Eastern Cape are considered poor. Now, this slide reflects the fact that there is an inverse relationship between schooling and poverty. Those that have no schooling at all, and that is in your far left side, about 3/4 of them were considered poor, whilst those on the far right side who had some higher level of education, post-school education, only 7% were considered poor. So as your education increases, your likelihood of being poor also then decreases, as you are more likely to get better jobs and also use your money better and generate and use opportunities better. Again, this particular slide shows the difference between male and female headed households in terms of poverty. You find here that, of course, we must remember that 59% of all headed households were poor. We find that in the case of males, about 58% of that households were poor, and then for females, it was about 60%. So poverty generally high for both. But I think we must re-emphasize here, because of the high immigration, or out-migration rather, out of the province, you might find that many of the males that have stayed behind were probably much older, dependent on social grants and remittances, whilst your more entrepreneurial younger people have probably migrated to look for greener grass elsewhere. And this would also then reflect in the fact that poverty is very, very similar between males and females in this slide. Looking at poverty, of course, one should also look further than just money metric poverty. In other words, that is poverty based on household income or individual income, because people are also receive various other services from, for instance, the state and various other societal agents in terms of education, access to services, and so forth. One such measure that we use is the South African Multidimensional Poverty Index, or so-called SAMPI, which provides a much more holistic view. This holistic view is, as I've explained very briefly, based on a number of variables. We're talking here about health, that particularly looks at child mortality, the death of children under 5. We're looking at education, access to education in terms of years of schooling, whether children attend school, and then also living standards, access to electricity for lighting, heating, cooking, and then, of course, also the type of water and sanitation that people have got access to. And then the most important one, economic activity, whether people are employed or indeed unemployed. As you can see here, and this just reflects again the earlier moneymetric measure that we saw earlier, the population in the Eastern Cape are far more deprived than the population for South Africa as a whole. Although there's been a decline in the Eastern Cape from 30% in 2001 to the 12.7% now in 2016, this is still significantly higher than what we're finding in the rest of South Africa. Looking at the individual districts themselves, we find that the most deprivation using this multiple index is found in Alfred Nzo, where 22% of the population suffered multidimensional poverty. And the lowest were found in Nelson Mandela Bay, of course, a metropolitan area, which is only 3%. Sarah Baartman, which is also one of the areas we're looking at, had a rate of about 4.6%, Buffalo City 7.3%, and Joe Kabi at 13.4%. Our Tambo was the second highest at about 19.2%. So this is clearly reflective of a lot of this disenfranchisement that we do find. This is just to emphasize the fact that unemployment is extremely important. Of course, both in terms of the SAMPI, but also in terms of ability to raise income. Now, this slide, I think, is also a very, very important slide. We're looking at the second bar from the top, just below Limpopo province again. And what is so interesting here is two things. The first thing that stands out is that only about 43% of households in the Eastern Cape indicated that their main source of income came from salaries. However, if you cast your eyes to the other side, you see that 55% of households said that their main source of income were derived from grants, any kind of social grants, old age grants, child support grants, etc. And then also that about 12% of households felt that remittances were their main source of income. This clearly shows a much poorer population, but also a household population that's dependent on either the state or dependent on other household members to send back money home from wherever they migrated to. So I think a very, very important thing also to maintain here is that many of these households are, of course, also headed by females, and particularly in the case of the Eastern Cape, elderly females that support large families on their social grants. If we have a look at service delivery, of course, integral part of the SAMPI, we find that generally speaking, there are a few districts that stands out in terms of the low percentage that lives in formal dwellings, Amatole, Chris Hani. The yellow ones, of course, the ones that we are looking at, our Tambo 43%, Alfredsdorp 42%, and those are the more rural ones. So your formal dwellings, of course, more located in your more urban areas. Informal dwellings, inversely, you'll find more in your metropolitan or highly urban areas. Buffalo City for 24.9% of all households lived in informal dwellings. But inversely, of course, in Nelson Mandela, it was only about 7%. Your female-led households, that's a slide, or that's the same slide, but a column on the right-hand side. You find that about 40% of households in Sarah Baartman, 45% of households in Buffalo City, 57% of households in our Tambo, and then also 57% in Alfred Nzo were female-headed. Now that's compared to an average for South Africa of about 58% or so. So you can see there's a significantly higher percentage of female-headed households in some of these districts, particularly the rural ones. In terms of access to improved sanitation, I think Eastern Cape is actually a very interesting case. I don't know if you can see my mouse here or my mouse here, but if you have a look here, that's in the right hand, in the kind of the right hand slide in the middle, you can see that the Eastern Cape increased the percentage of households with access to improved sanitation from 53.4% in 2002 to 88% by 2018, and that's actually above the average for South Africa. Now, that's largely been done by using pit toilets or ventilation pipes, and also some flush toilets in some of the urban areas. But it does show that where there's a will, there's a way. In terms of water, the situation is very similar. You find that access to water has actually improved. I'm sorry. Oh, there you go. Access to water has also improved from about 55% in 2002 to about 87.4% by 2018. Again, above the average for South Africa, and also consistently growing. This is another slide showing exactly the same thing, but just broken down by district. We can see that access to water in Buffalo City, Sarah Baartman are quite high, 97 and 92% respectively. However, if you go down to the rural areas, it becomes much lower. Alfred Nzo is only 46% and OR Tambo are only 39%. Access to electricity is generally quite high, although access in Alfred Nzo stands out as the lowest at about 65%. And then in terms of sanitation, we find that access to flush or chemical toilets in Alfred Nzo only stood at about 9.1%, and also in OR Tambo 25%. And then also, if it's not a district that we're discussing today, but Amatole is also about 24%. So this, of course, shows you that again there's a relationship between the rural nature of these municipalities, of course, also the income they generate and the services that are able to provide. And of course, that's also to a large extent, it depends on the geographical spread of the population. Clustered populations are usually easier to service. Women, of course, are extremely vulnerable groups in society, both because of lack of access to certain opportunities, but also because of the fact that they're expected to look after other family members and household members. And it places a large burden on their time and on their energies. Women, of course, have also been working in agriculture. And if you have a look at the Eastern Cape here, and this is one of the standout features of the Eastern Cape, you see that about 28% of the Eastern Cape households indicated in the community survey of 2016 that they participated in some kind of agriculture. Now, this is by far the highest in South Africa. It's just slightly higher than Limpopo, but significantly higher than the South African average of only 13.8%. Now, as you would have seen, many of these households, of course, female, and there's also a direct correlation between involvement in agriculture and decline in hunger. Again, if you have a look at this slide, measures the percentage of female-headed households that said they were likely to run out of money to buy food. Now, for Eastern Cape as a whole, it stood at about 27.2% for female-headed households and about 25% for male-headed households. So average of about 26% of households in the Eastern Cape. However, that varies. If you have a look at Sarah Baartman and Joe Kabi, you see that's about 20% each, 21% for each of them. Males, females are very, very similar. However, if you go to the opposite slide, the poorer districts, OR Tambo and also Alfred Nzo, you find that it's much higher percentage. It's almost 30%. And in the case of OR Tambo, it's about 27.6% again. So again, the poverty here shows a great impact on hunger. The question here was from the GHS, and the question was whether households actually suffered hunger and compared by male-female-headed households. And again, here we can see that your female-headed households were significantly likelier than the male-headed households to have suffered hunger in the previous year. In the case of Eastern Cape, this is this one year. We find that it is 9.6%, versus 6.2% for your male-headed households. Last slide, before we end, is one from the South African Demographic and Health Survey of 2016. One of the very few sources we actually have on this. We ask women whether they ever experienced physical violence or sexual violence. And we found that in the Eastern Cape, and this is a very unfortunate first place, that 6.7% of females found or argued or reported that they have ever experienced some kind of sexual violence. This is not, this is in terms of South Africa, it's very similar to what you find in Mpumalanga, Free State, slightly lower than Gauteng and significantly lower than the Northwest. But of course, by itself, much, much higher than we would hope for any of our daughters and mothers and wives. And then, however, the one that Eastern Cape stands out in is whether women have ever experienced physical violence. And here we find that almost 1/3, 32% of women said that they've ever experienced physical violence. And this is significantly higher, almost twice as high as the average for South Africa. For Gauteng, it's about 17.7%, Limpopo 14.4%, and the Eastern Cape we stand at 31.6%, which is of course by itself extremely high. And again, as I always say in these presentations, this is probably also an underestimate. So we should take this figure and we should know that whoever answered yes, they have experienced any of these, there are probably many more women who answered no because of fear of reprisal from partners or other people that probably know them in the community. And with that, I thank you all for listening to our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roux. It's really sad that Eastern Cape seemed to be one of the most violent provinces for women, and with the stats that is showing that women have been experiencing physical violence. We will continue with our program, and I just want to mention that the reason why we have the 5 districts this week is because of the fact that last week the others couldn't make it. But I'm so glad that we can have the information of all the districts so that we can share it with one another. We will now allow Commissioner Botha from the Commission on Gender Equality, a very important partner in the review of the Women's Charter, to speak on the state of gender equality. Over to you, Commissioner Botha.
Well, thank you, Deputy Chairperson. And let me start by greeting the Speaker of the province in absentia, and the councillors that are with us, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly in absentia. Just to thank you, also Deputy Chairperson, for this opportunity. Just to state that I am representing a colleague of mine, Commissioner Day, who is responsible for the province. She is unfortunately not able to be with us. I am a backup commissioner. But also, Chairperson, let me send greetings to you from our Chairperson, Commissioner Tamara Matebula. We're having a two-day meeting, which we call Commissioner's Plenary. But we felt that this is a very important engagement with NCOP because, Deputy Chair, our view is that all of these problems can only be addressed if the duty to bear or duty bearers, they know what is happening on the ground. So I just want to say that's how important we view this process, Chairperson, and thank you so much. Could I ask that there is a presentation, Chairperson, but in the main, I would want to focus, as we did in my province in Limpopo, focus on what do we think as a province in the Eastern Cape that we would like you and your colleagues to go out with, or to go away with, but also to ask the provincial leadership to in fact be seized with. So I will not talk about the mandates. We know that the Commission for Gender Equality is in fact a Chapter 9 institution created by an Act of Parliament. Chairperson, I will move on now, and I will not talk about our mandate, but something that's important is how do we do our work? We do our work, I mean, it says our mission is to promote, protect, monitor, and evaluate gender equality. We do this, Chairperson, with research, public education, policy development, legislative initiatives. You spoke in your opening address, Chairperson, you spoke about the 3 bills before Parliament. A colleague of mine, Commissioner Ntabiseng Mohale, has been involved from the CGE in assisting us in the development of or participating in the legislative initiatives. We also do litigation, Chairperson. We litigate. There are many examples I could give you. As we speak now, the research we do, the whole country would know that we were dealing with what one would call the shelter movement situation in the country, and the results we shared with you when we were in Limpopo are in fact not pleasing 26 years into our democracy, Chairperson. But we also do litigation. I mean, as we speak now, we are engaging with the Department of Health. Hello, Chairperson?
Yes.
I thought there was someone who wanted to raise it. Can I go on, Chairperson?
Continue, please.
Oh, there is a matter that we are dealing with now as we speak with the Department of Health, which is on forced sterilization, Deputy Chair. So these are part of, or one of the things of the many things that the Commission for Gender Equality does throughout the country, and in particular in the Eastern Cape. I want to move on, Chairperson, and talk about, I mean, could I only, let's move on, the slide operator, move on for me so that Chairperson, I want to focus mainly on the areas that my colleague from Stats A spoke about. And these statistics, I hope we will not forget that we're talking about, these are human beings. These are women in particular, Honorable Deputy Chair, that we should never forget that it is women who are at the cold phase of inequality, of the cold phase of violence, as the colleague from Stats had clearly with the numbers. But the point we're making is that we work in these areas, and Chairperson, I want to move. I mean, this is our structure, organogram. I will not talk about it. This is the team in the Eastern Cape, four individuals who, I mean, our area is vast, Chairperson, it's vast, rural, and with 4 people, which is something that, the same as Limpopo, where I operate from, that the vastness and the ruralness of the area makes it rather impossible and for us to do those things that ideally we would like to do, like reaching out these communities, because you only have one provincial legal officer, in fact, whose service is 2. This is Northern Cape and Eastern Cape. So Deputy Chair, it's always about financial constraints, budgetary constraints that the CGE, as one of the Chapter 9s, continue to be faced with. I mean, sad to say that of all the Chapter 9, other than the CRL, we are the least supported. And look at how huge our mandate is. Look at the provinces that you are servicing. So, Chairperson, this is the Eastern Cape office doing amazing work with constrained budgetary, allocations, Chairperson. Let's move. I actually want to, Chair, which may not be reflected here. When the colleague from Stats A spoke about these areas, I want to focus now on what has been, our findings in the different districts we're dealing with, which is not reflected here, but I think it's important, Deputy Chair, for us to talk about. I mean, Alfred Nzo, there is a heightened, and I hope that we'll stop there with the picture, so that I talk about, I mean, Alfred Nzo, a Deputy Chairperson, we are dealing with a high or an upsurge of child marriages, and it speaks to, after this presentation from the Stats A, it speaks to what are the reasons that you have this high number of child marriages? And the answer would be found in the levels of poverty in these areas. But you also have witchcraft killing, Deputy Chairperson. Now, witchcraft killing, it unfortunate or sadly, because of patriarchal society that we're in, it's only older women who are poor, who are accused of witchcraft, who are killed. Same as is found in my province in Limpopo. So you find, Chairperson, in the Alfred Nzo, there are these two important elements that we would like you to note as you engage in your final report with the province. Deputy Chairperson, I mean, child marriage, Alfred Nzo, on the rise, witchcraft killing on the rise. That it impacts adversely and in a particular manner or peculiar manner, women, elderly women. And Joe Kabi, I mean, the same thing happens about old people who are women who are killed. But you also have, I mean, these two, I mean, Alfred Nzo and Joe Kabi, Deputy Chair, I mean, they border Lesotho, so, and KZN. There's also a problem with starting of people. There's also of children. I mean, you have young boys who are trafficked. You have women who are trafficked in both from both areas in Lesotho, KZN. So these are important things for us to mention to you, Deputy Chair, and your team. You also talk about, when you look at Sarah Batman, the stats from my colleague would bear out the fact that this is a farming area, the farming area where you have, I mean, but also the municipality there. Our view is that there is lack of understanding, and I'm happy that they are part of this meeting. They will be able to answer for themselves. Deputy Chairperson, in this area, Sarah Batman, farming area, I mean, the conditions exploitative, and they mainly affect impact on women. Women, I mean, their living conditions are appalling. I mean, the salary is appalling. I mean, no sanitation, Deputy Chair. But above that, or more than that, Chair, it's you also have the level of violence that is prevalent in this district, in this area, especially the farming area. But also, Deputy Chair, there is a set element that we are of the view, and then that the council does not seem to understand or appreciate, I mean, our mandate, our role. As a result, we would have findings, we would engage them, but the turnaround, Chairperson, is, I mean, leaves a lot to be desired. And these things must be said so that, Deputy Chair, we are able to hold those duty bearers accountable in these instances, because our view is that it is women who are at the coalface of these inequalities. And it's a shame that the farming areas, 26 years into our democracy, they remain as they were during the apartheid years. And these situations, Deputy Chair, should be addressed, and then we should talk through. But now, Chairperson, we then move on. Maybe you could let me ask to operate the slides so that you can continue. So Chairperson, and another slide. Another slide. Well, another slide. This is our monitoring work, Deputy Chairperson. We doing monitoring work with municipalities on gender mainstreaming. Like I said, that we, with the Women's Charter implementation, there are those municipalities in these districts, as I mentioned earlier, that we are not particularly happy with because of their implementation or lack thereof, and also their turnaround time, Chairperson, which tells us that their understanding of our mandates and the work that the CGE is doing is in fact not quite appreciated or understood. Next slide, please. Well, Chairperson, we do other than the education, the litigation, we also do investigations. You know, investigation both from I mean, we are public sector and private sector. I mean, in this area, Mercedes-Benz, you know, we would call them for the aim is to find out, Chairperson, as to the private sector. What is transformation? Because the sad thing, unfortunately, is that the focus, and understandably so, has always been on the public sector, on government, and then for understandable reasons as duty bearers. But we tend to do what, Chairperson, not to focus on the private sector and the things that are happening with transformation there, with women there, I mean, are shocking. Women's, I mean, empowerment, with sexual harassment, violence in the workplace. I mean, all of these things, they impact on the livelihood of women. So, Chairperson, these hearings, what we seek to do is, upon producing a report, sending it to Parliament, but also calling them to account, this private or public. The aim is that how do we then walk the journey together? How do we make sure that companies have sexual harassment documents or policies, but they are not just policies, that they are able to implement these policies? How do we make sure that government departments, I mean, have programs, ongoing programs on that focuses on women's empowerment? I mean, we also, like the president had said, that there must be a certain amount set aside for businesses that are run and led by women. So we go into, when we do these investigations, Chairperson, Deputy Chair, and your team, is mainly and primarily to make sure that these institutions, they live up to what the Constitution says. Next slide, please. I mean, our universities, Chairperson, our universities, there's the violence there. I mean, the response there also leaves a lot to be desired, Chairperson. I mean, we called, for example, your Walter Sisulu University, for them, Mandela, in fact, for them to account. And our view is that all of these, they're important so that these institutions, they are meant, or they are always reminded to account. I will move on, Chairperson and Deputy Chair, talk about, I mean, I spoke to you about the investigation we did in the state of shelters in our country. We know that, and those findings spoke to lack of funding. If fundings do come late. They are, LGBTIQ plus individuals, persons not accommodated, or their stay is made unbearable. And all of these things, one has to continue to emphasize and to repeat, to use your words, Deputy Chair, to repeat that they impact, they affect women, because our society, it is structured, it's predicated on patriarchal tendencies. We are a society that continues to hate women, a society that continues to ill-treat women, to demean women, to disrespect women. So our view is that, Deputy Chair, that we do this outreach, these reports, these researches, to put a searchlight on why is it that women continue to be at the receiving end of inequality, of oppression, of disrespect in our society, 26 years into our democracy. Next slide, please. Well, Chairperson, this talks about what we do in terms of, the powers that we have when we demand of people to come and appear before us, both private and public. Next slide, please. It's about litigation, Chairperson. But what do we then do to make sure that we reach communities? I spoke to about how vast both the areas that I happen to serve, Limpopo and Eastern Cape. How do you then reach these communities? We have education officers or an education officer who goes on and to talk about, or to in fact do advocacy work, to training on what is GBV, and on what is femicide, maintenance, witchcraft killing. All of those are done via this education outreach. Or we also, Deputy Chair, do what we call legal clinics, which are free of charge in all of those areas. And these are meant to empower, especially women, on their rights. The different regimes of marriages. And some sitting here listening may think that this is trivial, this is not important. But our view is that it is women, again, who are hard done by these different regimes of marriages that more often than not, they don't understand, but then they are on the back foot. So our aim with these legal clinics is to make sure that communities that are comprised of women in the main, they do understand their rights and where to go in an event that they seeking relief, Deputy Chair. Next slide, please. This is Chairperson, Deputy Chair. I spoke to you about, gender mainstreaming within municipalities. All of these municipalities I spoke to you about, with those problems there, we do a gender mainstreaming. The one thing that I need to emphasize to you and your team is that there seems to be no appreciation on the seriousness or the importance of gender mainstreaming, of gender budgeting, Deputy Chair. As a result, if you don't have gender mainstreaming, if you don't have gender budgeting, how do you make sure that you have programs that impacts or that speaks to women? Because, you have this generic budgeting, but the generic budgeting, Deputy Chair, does not address women's lived experiences, because the fact of the matter is that, and this is scientific, and then just a colleague from Stats has actually spoken to, it is women who are, once again to repeat, at the cold phase of inequality. So if you don't have gender mainstreaming and you're at the council, if in your IDPs you do not have programs that focuses on women's empowerment, the likelihood is that you will not be able to address women's challenges on the ground, Chairperson. Let's move on. So these are the programs that we have. Next slide, please. Well, next slide, please. Well, our legal department, as I said, we do work with, we do look at different, the different laws explaining, what is Ugutwala, different cultural practices, so that, well, are there any legal recourse? So we do all of these with our legal officer, who, as I said, we were facing challenges. He is serving, that this should be, he's serving two provinces, the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape, which unfortunately, Deputy Chairperson, makes it difficult for us to reach those people that we think are important and must be reached. And this is all because of budgetary constraints that the Commission has. The vast area, how do you employ or don't have, one legal officer, one education officer? It shows that somehow we may not be as serious as we profess to be about creating an environment where gender equality would find itself thriving as a country, Deputy Chairperson. Let's move on. Next slide, please. Well, this is, our work in how do you contribute into different legislations in the country, Chairperson, and also public hearings that we have, and also how do you support your South African Law Commission, and so that we bring this gendered aspect. Chairperson, if you listen carefully with your team to the presentation by Mr. Roux from Stats, one of the things that, or the thing that continuously come out is that the majority of households are led by women. And if we can make the connection, Deputy Chair, the connection between poverty, between unemployment, between inequality, between patriarchy, and if we connect these dots, we will realize as to why is it that GBV, femicide, keeps on rising. Why is it that as a country, we are not able to deal decisively with all of these challenges, and mainly because, Chairperson, we do not have what one would call a proper gender budgeting framework in our country nationally. Well, next slide, please. I mean, Chairperson, Deputy Chair, I spoke about procurement. I spoke about the importance of ensuring that there is proper understanding of when you procure, that procurement, they become alive. And this is what the President has actually said recently in his address during the National Women's Day, that we must be deliberate about it. We must be deliberate and conscious about it, to put aside a particular or certain percentages when we do procurement, and be deliberate about it, that this procurement must go to women businesses, and we must move beyond giving women tenders that they're cleaners, or tenders for cooking, because then what we do, as I said, Deputy Chair, to you, is that that women are nannies. We move them from being nannies at home, and then they nanny even during tendering processes. We think that perpetuates these inequalities in our society. Well, let's move on. Next slide, please. Well, this talks about, what we have done, Chairperson. We actually have had these hearings with the Department of Health. I spoke to you about the forced sterilization, Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, Department of Basic Education, Department of Social Development. And if you look at all of them, the majority of the clientele of these departments remain women. So unless you are able, within these departments, you are able to mainstream gender, you are able to do gender budgeting, chances are that you will miss the majority of people that ideally you're supposed to serve. Next slide, please. Well, next slide, please. This continues with the legislations and the investigation I spoke to you about, Deputy Chairperson. Let's move on. Next slide, please. Chairperson, I want to, we spoke about, in the Eastern Cape, we strive to, cover all the districts. We have 2 metros this financial year, and even 2019-20, we have stakeholder engagements, outreach clinics I spoke to. Chairperson, very important, stakeholder, traditional leaders. Our view is that, and throughout the 9 provinces, and Eastern Cape.
Commissioner Botha, as you begin to conclude, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Deputy Chair. We think that, as I end, there are certain stakeholders, and one of those stakeholders that we think is important, they're important, are the traditional leaders. And we know that the traditional leaders, more often than not, are the custodians of culture, and this is where more often than not, they become gatekeepers. This is where patriarchy resides, and our view, to echo your words when you opened, our view is to work with them in dealing with the adverse effect or impact of patriarchy that it has on men, on women. Another slide, please. With Chairperson, Deputy Chair, there are many, engagements that we're continuing. We have a relationship with Josalga. We have a relationship with, which means we are able to get to different municipalities. Chair, I will. Before I end, I want to talk about the challenges other than the ones that I've spoken to you about as I end. I will not now go through the slides. Your Chairperson, Deputy Chair, as a commission, we are faced with these, what one would call these challenges in the commission, where I spoke about the GBV in the province is still very high, like it is in the whole country. the colleague from Stats has actually confirmed this with statistics. Deputy Chair, we also have a challenge with killing of women. I spoke about femicide, GBV, witchcraft, child marriages, and we think that all of these things, they are important for NCOP to be seized with as you engage with the leadership in the province, that the Commission for Gender Equality, these are the matters that we are not happy with. Chairperson, let me end and once again to thank you for this process and say that we as a commission, we stand ready to continue to support and to journey with you. Chairperson, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Botha. You mentioned some very important stakeholders, particularly the traditional leaders, as well as the private sector, as well as the LGBTIQ. That is the stakeholders that we need to work with, and we appreciate the fact that it seems as if in the Eastern Cape there is quite a considerable collaboration between the different stakeholders together with the CGE. So we are going to continue with our program. I just want to welcome other permanent delegates from the NCOP that have also joined us in the meantime. Honorable Mama Marikhane, as well as Honorable Yunus Karim, who is regularly attending our events. As we continue, we will now hand over the program to our permanent delegate from the Eastern Cape, who is a chairperson on the Select Committee on Petitions and Executive Undertakings, Honorable Zukiswa Ncita. Over to you, Honorable Member. We will continue with session 2 of the program.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chair. Greetings to my colleagues from the NCOP, the legislatures, and as well as our presenters who have presented very well this afternoon. I hope we will engage with this presentation. They are quite interesting. And also the officials that have joined us. I will not waste time.
Sorry, Honorable
I
didn't notice that the permanent delegate from the Eastern Cape, Honorable Dongeni, have also joined us.
Yes, she has. Yes. Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, for that. Let me not waste time and ask our members that are present just to comment from the presentations, and if there are questions of clarities, they also ask those questions. Over to you, honorable members, both from NCOP as well as legislature, if there are questions. I'm checking from my list if there are hands. So far, I don't see any. Can I take that the presentation were quite straightforward? There are no questions of clarities. Then if that is the case, it means I have to move then, Honorable Deputy Chair, to the next presentation, which will be done by, where I am now. My gadget is failing me. Okay, I'm with Alfred Nzo, and the presenter for us is Honorable Executive Mayor, Councillor S. Metro Makulu. Can I ask him to present to us? For now, I see a hand. Sorry, before you, I see the hand of Unati Nobongoza. Can I allow first Ms. Nobongoza to address us? Sis Unati, I see your hand. Sis Unati Nobongoza. Sis Unati, is your hand up?
It doesn't seem like that. Possibly we must continue with the municipalities and take all the questions at the end.
Okay, fine. I will then take Honorable Executive Mayor, Councillor Metro Makulu to address us. Mayor Ukona. Honorable Mayor.
Honorable Mita, it seems as Buffalo City is available at the current moment. Others are struggling with connectivity. So possibly you can take Buffalo City. Okay.
Okay, we'll then take Buffalo City. And when the is available, must Buffalo City.
Thank you very much, and greetings to you, Chair, greetings to the Deputy Chair of the NCOP, and all members, honorable members present. I am joined by the Chairperson of the Buffalo City Women's Caucus, Councillor Clara Yekiso, as well as the Head of Directorate for Executive Support, Ms. Ncumisa Stugwana. Ms. Stugwana will be doing the presentation on our behalf. Can I hand over to you, Ms. Stugwana?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Mita. Let me quickly share my presentation so that we can all see it. Okay, just 1 second.
The maximum is 15 minutes. We'll appreciate if it's less.
Thank you, ma'am. No, I will definitely do it less. I'm not sure if from your side they have got a copy of our presentation, but I'm trying to share it.
No, not yet.
Okay, let me try again. Share screen.
But you can continue and someone can help you to flight the presentation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Let me continue. The Honorable Executive Mayor, Councillor Phakathi, has introduced me as Ncumisa Stugwana, the Head of Directorate for Executive Support Services at Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality. As part of the introduction is that Buffalo City Municipality is the key urban core of the eastern part of the Eastern Cape, and as it consists a corridor of urban areas stretching from the port city of East London to the east, through Mdantsane and reaching to Timbaza in the west. Oh, thank you for flighting that. And in terms of the male and female split of the metro population, was 92.4 males per 100 females in 2018, with a fairly stable population, with a share of female population at 51.9 being very similar to the national average of 51.05. In total here, we've got about 460,000, which is translated to 51.9% females, and 424,000, which translates to 48% of males in Buffalo City. And Chairperson, I'm very excited to share that my statistics tallies with what Vu has also presented in terms of the Stats SA. So we're singing from the same book. The following groups are deemed in Buffalo City as vulnerable, that is as part of the metro development trajectory. We talk of women, older persons, children and youth, persons with disabilities, as well as persons infected and affected by HIV and AIDS. And as such, the metro has got a special programs unit which deals directly and focuses on those vulnerable groups as stated in that bullet point. Whilst the metro does not have a gender budget policy, and I think even the commissioner spoke to the fact that even at a national level, we don't have the gender budgeting framework, which will assist then municipalities to develop their own gender budgeting policies. This MM strives for holistic transversal mainstreaming within IDP and budgeting processes and in keeping with its development trajectory so as to reduce vulnerability. What does that mean? It means that the Metro's core deliverables and mandate must seek to support and beneficiate the vulnerable groups, and this ought to be reflected and traced across the operational plans and budgets. So whilst we don't have the budget that's specifically targeting women, our budgeting is mainstreamed through all the directorates, and as such, you find that even on infrastructure, we had Women Contractor Development Program, and through our APWP program, there are programs that deal directly with women. And when we report, even in terms of the our supply chain, in terms of how tenders have been awarded, there's a column there which also explains how many women have benefited on certain value of tenders, not only for catering, as the commissioner alluded to. The CMM has a gender forum, which is elected from gender-wide committees representatives, and the said forum assists with awareness raising and commemoration of days of importance. So what happens is that as we have 10 ward committee members in each of the wards, and we know out of the 10, there is a representative that is elected to look at gender issues. So those representatives from all the wards make up the gender forum, and we meet on a regular basis to ensure that all issues that affect women in each of the wards of Buffalo City are addressed. Further to the gender forum, Buffalo City has established a vibrant multi-women's caucus committee, not only a committee as well as an office, which is a Section 79 committee of council, and the said Women's Caucus undertakes outreach activities within wards, providing information and capacitation to ward-based women and the girl child, as well as providing oversight in council, sensitizing the need for gender issues to be considered and reflected within the directorate's planning and budget. And I think the mayor did introduce our councillor who chairs the committee of the Women's Caucus. So that's the responsibility that that committee is tasked with. Next slide, please. Now, the objectives of the Women's Caucus, they include, amongst others, the act as an advisory and consultative body of all women councillors in Buffalo City by raising and representing their interests and concerns within council structure. It also facilitates leadership development and participation of women in council, and ensure that participation of women in the IDP and budget processing and build women councillors in PCM, and engendering mainstreaming and equity within Buffalo City. They also reaffirm and strengthen partnerships and networks that support women in local government, spheres of government, civil society, and Chapter 9 institutions like the Commission for Gender Equality. They also lobby for budget for women beneficiating programs. As a result, that committee has got its operating budget to perform the tasks assigned to it. The Women Caucus has had a planned strategic session for women in council, which regards to gender budgeting. However, this was put on hold due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we're still planning to ensure that we move towards making sure that there is gender budgeting within the city. Next slide, please. In terms of mainstreaming, the COVID-19 pandemic provides an opportunity to redress inequalities and socioeconomic vulnerability, and to place women and the girl child at the center of current and post-COVID-19 recovery plans. We should incorporate that Article 12 of the Women's Charter. Provincial and local government are well placed to lead such through mandatory shared cross-cutting vulnerability reducing indicators and targets. As per MFMA Circular 88, where now they begin to enforce municipalities as well as metros to report in terms of the targets they are meeting towards addressing issues of women. For a case in point is a number of women employed, job created, economic opportunities created within the directorate's core business. That is, when you report, even in terms of the SMME development or cooperatives that has been established, you need to be able to say how many of those that are women led. Percentage of directorate's budget spent benefiting, targeting women and the girl child within the directorate's core business. Those are indicators that National Treasury has enforced on metros to report on as part of the MFA Circular 88. Next slide. Now, sadly, COVID-19 has heightened the scourge of gender-based violence in terms of the gender-based violence, femicide, and killing of children. And as we speak now in Buffalo City, there's a memorial service of a 6-year-old child who was also killed in this gender-based violence. Women's Caucus is leading ward-based awareness programs to raise awareness, as well as access to interventions and empowerment platforms for victims and survivors of gender-based violence. The caucus is also interacting with boy, child, and men mentoring programs to try and break the cycle of violence. And key stakeholders which the Women's Caucus collaborates with include the Chapter 9 institution, law enforcement, the courts, prevent bail for perpetrators and correctional services, as well as traffic department. And they also facilitate, no, sorry, that's not training, with SAPS and Metropolis attending to gender-based violence cases. The police stations to promote safer environment for women who want to report gender-based violence-related cases. And I know the chairperson is busy now with a project to appoint EPWP participants who will assist women that go to police station to report such cases to ensure that they are not victimized. Ensuring ongoing support and assistance to families who were affected by gender-based violence. Next slide. The Women Caucus plays an advocacy role within council such that gender lens should be considered during planning, budgeting, and reporting processes, which the city still does. The Metro has also resourced the Office of Women's Caucus Chairperson and Women's Caucus affiliated strategic sessions for women in council, and gender budgeting is planned before the end of the current financial year, so that as we plan for our next 5-year IDP, we ensure that our IDP has got a dedicated budget for gender-based issues. An outcome of the said strategic session will be a costed action plan along with shared or cross-cutting gender vulnerability reducing indicators and targets, taking into consideration the Women's Charter and its 12 articles for inclusion within the PCMM's performance management system. I think that's the end. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Honorable Mata.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I am told that the Alfred Nzo is now connected. We have agreed that we'll be discussing all the presentation plus the presentation by the municipalities at the end of our program. Can we then ask Alfred Nzo to present? Alfred Nzo? Again, we can't find it now. Alfred Nzo. Again, we are going to pass Alfred Nzo and take Sarah Batman, Executive Mayor of Sarah Batman, Sis Yoon. Sarah Batman. What is the problem today? Is it a connectivity that is failing me, not the municipalities? Can you take Sarah Batman? No. Alfred Nzo, I'm in trouble today.
I'm sorry, honorable member. Apparently, there is a Ms. Bosman that is supposed to give the presentation. I don't know, Jacqueline Bosman. And I see that she's on the platform, but I don't know. She's supposed to give the presentation.
For which municipality?
Alfred Nzo.
Oh, okay, it's okay. Ms. Bosman, can you please present? Hello, Mayor. Mabacho Baba delegated. Tell us if you have delegated honorable mayors. Ms. Bosman? What is happening? I do not know now what to do. Honorable Deputy Chair, I'm stuck. Can I take Joe Kabi? Councillor N.U. Shatuka. Is Joe Kabi in? What is not happening?
Honorable Mwita. We are trying to understand what is happening. Remember, there was others that indicated that they have connectivity problems. And I think our Tambo, they sent us an apology that they would join later. And I think in the meantime, possibly we can continue with the discussion until we find out what is happening with regards to those. There's only one municipality, like I said, that said that they had an imbizo, so they will join us later. So
Okay.
that's our Tambo. So I don't know. And then Alfred and Zoe indicated that Ms. Bosman is supposed to continue with the presentation, and the others have, like Joe Gabi, have spoke about connectivity. I don't know what is the issue, why they are still not getting connectivity. So if Ms. Bosman is not there, and the representative from our Tambo have not yet connected, let us then continue with the discussion in the meantime.
Okay. Whilst we are continuing with the discussions, I would like the staff to help us check as well what is happening with Sarah Batman, so that when we come back, we get the full briefing of the municipalities that we're supposed to present. Thanks to Buffalo City, they have saved our lives. Can we then get to engagement? I must say, I have looked at the chat box. I see that there are advices that are, I'm sure ECGE have noted the advice on the issue of finances that is coming from Mr. Norman Mapela. So I will plead with Nati Sarah Batman, comment. Sarah Batman is commenting here, but they are not answering us.
And also, Ms. Bosman is saying she's trying to get a better connectivity, so they will still try. So that's why I say possibly to us, because there is a plea that we must allow the rural woman, in spite of the connectivity challenges, to be part and parcel of this. So we hope they will be able to get some way to connect. But I think for us to use the time productively is just to possibly continue with the discussion.
I'm allowing that time for us to start engaging.
My hand is up, Mamngat.
Who is that?
Mamfanda.
Yeah, Diabona Mamfanda. There's also Umzu Janki after you. Those are the only two hands. Mamfanda?
Thank you, Chairperson of the session. Thank you. Good afternoon to all the members again. I'm a little bit frustrated, if I'm telling you the truth. I don't know how the invitations were issued out specifically. Who must give the reports from the district? Because I'm seeing that the trend that is not right. Because I think when it comes to gender agenda, we want the person, which is a mayor or MM. But I'm seeing that our districts are giving somebody else. So I don't think I'm happy with that arrangement, because we have our mayors and they've got our full support. We want a report from the mayor so that we know that we have a mayor that is sensitive on the gender agenda and women emancipation. So we don't want somebody who's going to give, when to do the byway of giving somebody else. Sifuna is report iphume kumeya engutata, so that siyazi uba she has i-transformation agenda uyithwele engutata, because ungene as a mayor because of many vote of women. So asifuni lento ba athi xa ngutata ayibona uba lento yikamama. We don't like that arrangement. So ndiyayimazi umeya wase-BCM is supportive of women's caucus, but i-report siyifuna kuye, not from somebody else. Ndiyayibona nase-Alfranzo is not the mayor who is in, it's somebody else. Nase-Sarah Batman, Sarah Batman, the mayor of the district is a woman, but it's somebody else. Women, we must learn to respect our own agenda. Immediately we don't respect our own agenda, we are in trouble. Patrick is very cruel. Immediately they see us, we are doing a secondary into with our transformation agenda and women emancipation, we're in for high jump. So I'm raising that point. Our district didn't take this thing serious. I don't know how the invitation went, but I don't think they've taken it very serious. So I want the NCOP to note that, because we are in trouble. We must force the issue of a transformation agenda and emancipation of women. If we are not doing it, we are in for high jump. So I just wanted to raise that Mayor Zetu, so we support them, we love them, but they must take responsibility of giving a report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Fanta. The invitations were quite clear. They were directed to offices of the mayor. And the mayor, that is why he's here himself and decided to delegate. I take note of the point that when we invite mayors to present, we mean that exactly. That's the point you are emphasizing. And invitations were sent on time, but we have to follow up and see why are they not responding, because I pick up that there is this thing of not responding to the invitation of the NCOP, but all the correspondences were directed accordingly. The ones of the province were directed to office of the premier and also to the office of the speaker. So all those offices that are highest in our spheres of government, we are communicating direct with them. And as well, the message is clear that the mayor will give the presentation. Thanks that you are reminding them of their responsibility. Can I take the next one after Mamfanda? I know that there were two hands. Now the other hand has disappeared.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Rita. Yes, I'm from Joe Kabi District Municipality. The presentation has been sent, and the executive mayor is ill sick, and he has also delegated the councillor within his office, Councillor Hlatuga, to make a presentation. And Councillor Hlatuga is struggling with the connectivity. I was just asking whether can I present on her behalf, but looking into the comment made by the previous speaker, so I'm tempted to check whether am I able to do that in the spirit that they are not available currently.
First, you introduced yourself, but you didn't tell us which position are you holding in the municipality.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nita. I am Zuvugile Janji. I am holding a position of an SPU manager within the office of the municipal manager and the executive mayor.
We will allow you to present because we want to hear the report of Joe Kabi. But those are the things that we do not want as an institution. When we ask for accountability, those that are supposed to account, they do not come to the meeting, and as well, they do not present and take very junior officials to come and account to us. I think municipalities must take the NCOP very serious. If it means we have to subpoena the mayors to come and present to us, we will do that. Can I then allow you to present?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I will just ask on that side to share my screen so that I can present it. Thank you very much. This is a presentation from Joe Kabi District Municipality on behalf of the executive mayor and on behalf of councillor who was given the mandate to do, but due to e-connectivity, let me take this opportunity and present. After receiving the template from the province, we decided to do the presentation as instructed. Can I go to the next slide? On my introduction, Chair, I want to say iJo'qaba District Municipality is one of the 6 district municipalities in the Eastern Cape Province. And the district head office is located in Barkly East, which is the smallest town. And following the amalgamation of Malzwai and Harib local municipalities in 2016, the district consists of 3 local municipalities now, which he had 4 local municipalities. And then the third district is Elundini and Walter Sisulu, which is an amalgamated local municipality, and Senqu local municipality. Next slide. On the next slide, Honorable Chair, you will see that there's a map of Jo'qaba, just to give a background and introducing what I was saying. There's Walter Sisulu, there's Senqu, and there's Elundini with its own town. And when you look at the map, you will find that iJo'qaba is bordering with Lesotho, where you see Sterkspruit having a border, and it also a border with Free State Province, as well as bordering with Alfred Nzo. Can I get the next slide? The municipality, as I indicated, it is notable that there is a very high unemployment rate in this district, and the majority of these people are women. Unemployment is hovering over 40% in the district, and women constitute the majority of the poorest in the society. Next slide. In terms of just the background, the area and the towns are shown below. I don't want to bother you much. There's Elundini, there's Walter Sisulu, there's Senqu, but what is key there is that those 2 local municipalities, which is Elundini and Senqu, are the most one which are rural in nature. Next slide. In terms of the statistics, South Africa Census 2001 and 2011, together with the 2016 community survey, the population of the district slightly increased from 341 to 349 in 2011. And currently in 2016, we are in 372, as shown below the table there, stipulate what I am saying. Currently, when you see there's a population, there's a number of households, and there's Jo'qaba and its own local municipality with those particular numbers. Can I get to the next slide? The municipality, in its own endeavors to address the issue of women, has crafted in 2010 what is called a mainstreaming policy and a strategy since 2012, and has been adopted by the council. And in that policy, the gender issues are incorporated there. Next slide. iJo'qaba, in its own organogram, has got a post of a gender desk within the mainstreaming unit where I am serving. That focal person is solely looking for the gender issues within the municipality. The unit report directly to the COO under the office of the municipal manager, and the municipality has got a budget for gender programs. Next slide. In terms of the structure which is in place in the municipality, in order to advance the gender equality, we've got the Women Caucus, both the district and the local women caucus, which are functional in nature and has got their own program. We've got women economic empowerment, we've got women in agriculture, we've got women in construction, we've got South African Women in Dialogue. Next slide. Next slide. Now, in terms of Women Charter for Effective Equality, in terms of those 12 articles, around the issue of equality, the municipality is using Employment Equity Act on selection and recruitment processes, which is within the skills development section. 50-50 quota in the private sector as a challenge and other political parties is still a challenge. They don't meet this particular 50%, 50-50 quota. Then as a district, we are recommending that the government to enforce all private sectors in order to implement a quota system. In terms of law and administration of justice, we have got the CPF structures which are in place. Cases, what we discovered as a challenge, the cases took long to be finalized at the Justice Department. The second challenge is that perpetrators of these crimes are not arrested. And if arrested, you normally see within a short time of within the community, and which worries our women in the society. Again, we also recommend that the bylaw, as a challenge, that the bylaws are not enforced by all law enforcement agencies in our district. Then we therefore recommend that the database of all gender-based violence cases be developed and be submitted to structures for transparency purposes and for a follow-up purposes. Number two, that a mechanism be developed to enforce all law enforcement agencies to enforce bylaws within our district. Next slide. Around the issues of economy, the municipality is supporting women project by implementing EEE, and the district in its nature is rural, and the agriculture sector is growing for economic activities, though large portion of land still owned by previously advantaged group. That is, we've got farms, we've got a lot of lands that are being owned by whites. We are recommending on this aspect that the government should opt for the allocation of land specifically for women development in order to sustain their project, because women do have their project, but in a small land. In terms of education and training, this district has got a skills development section which trained women in different skills like business management, women's rights, legal matters, etc. Next slide. In terms of development, infrastructure, and the environment, women benefited in RDP houses since its commencement in terms of the government of the national unit. About 4% of the households reside in informal settlement, including those in backyards and those that are in formal settlement and or in farm. So it means that this 4%, which was also mentioned in the previous presentation, is also in line with what we are reporting, that this 4% of households is in informal settlement, which has got a lot of gender-based violence within. There's a lack of land available for housing development. We are recommending that to explore expropriation of land in order to give priority to public interest, especially women and municipal development plans. And we also recommend that we should integrate housing development and prioritize indigents in areas close to work opportunities in order to ensure that women are secured as gender-based violence is rife in our area. Next slide. In terms of gender-based violence, we were asked whether are there any plans and programs. Yes, JTM has planned to launch the men's sector, as the interim structure has been already established. And then this men's sector is going to be launched very soon, in order to ensure that we do have a structure that deals with gender-based violence, man to man. And then number two, we plan to host a district men's parliament on the 11th and 12th of November. And there is a 6-month plan which was adopted by Women Caucus from July up to January on gender-based violence. Secondly, we do have gender-based violence dialogues targeting youth and LGBTQI. We also, Ijoe Gqabi hosted an anti-gender-based violence summit in 2019 and crafted its summit resolutions, which we are busy implementing those resolutions of this gender-based violence summit. We also have door-to-door campaigns focusing on gender-based violence across the district, and we visited all safe homes for children and abused women and engaged relevant departments for support purposes, because children and women, they go the same line, and they are affected on gender-based violence. Next slide. Next slide, please. Again, we've got capacity building. The previous slide, please. We have got a capacity building workshop focusing on gender-based violence and legislation that protect women. We have organized marches and picketing to courts for gender-based violence against women, especially to the areas that are rife on gender-based violence, e.g. the Sterkspruit area, Alwa North, and Elundini, which is on Fletcher. We've got 16 days of activism programs of no violence against women and children, and we do have we had a special prayer for the infected and affected on gender-based violence and COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. As I'm concluding, Chair, I would like to say the Women Caucus, Women Economic Empowerment, and the Joe Gqabi DM are committed in ending the gender-based violence by implementing programs that seeks to deal with the gender-based violence directly. Further, recommend that national and provincial government should avail their resources to advance the struggle of women against gender-based violence and other programs aimed at supporting women development. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us then allow the next, which will be Alfred Nzo, if they are back. Can you please ask Alfred Nzo to present? Or else they have run away completely.
No.
No. I'm happy to hear that. Then they must present.
They are still trying. They said they will send the presentation through if they are still struggling with connectivity. Our Tambo said that they will join later. They are still traveling just to find this place with stable connectivity, and then they will also try to log on. But Alfred Nzo is definitely trying. They are struggling, I can see, because the network is unstable. But I think they must just try. They must use the hotspotting of the phones and try.
Can we then check if Sarah Batman is in? Honorable Executive Ekani.
Sarah Bartman seemed to not be on the platform.
Wow. All right. So whilst you are waiting for them to connect, those that are still trying to connect, it's true that let's engage the presentations, both Buffalo City and also our presenters, Stats SA and Gender Equality. Can we engage? All right, I've got the hand again of Honorable Fanta, or else it was raised then.
I see, ma'am.
Oh, all right. Kubake Koskas.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think in both reports, especially the Jokabi, I'm hearing the notion of special programs being the events managers. This that we have been crying all along. That as the FFC report last week indicated in Amatol, the same applies in these two districts. All special programs are just events managers that are dealing with Women's Day, 16 days, GBV. Transformation agenda of dealing with emancipation of women is totally not there. I think when we're doing this review, we need to stress that the issue of special programs that are dealing with gender, disability, children in various departments and municipalities. They are the lowest paid officials according to their ranks. And as Gender Machinery, we've been crying for this, that we need the strategic appointment of these people, because the transformation is not, by the way, a simple thing. It's not a simple thing. But our departments and municipalities continues to undermine the transformation agenda, especially the emancipation of women, to just appoint anyone who have no clue on transformation agenda and emancipation of women. Hence, they are being tasked for only events, nothing else. For the whole year, nothing else. They are just events managers. It's like that, Deputy Chairperson, even in the government department of Eastern Cape. They are events managers, that's all. They're dealing with 16 days, Women's Day celebration, International Women's Day, nothing else. Whilst women, we demand and we are ready to take leadership position. So in these reviews, we need to look at where are the deployment of special programs, at what levels, because they are in the lowest ranks. So listening in both these reports, even the other one of last week, transformation agenda is not taken care by municipalities and government departments. And that must come to an end. I just want to raise those 2 points because I've noticed, especially in Jokabi, they are just events. They are good events, but sifuna amakhosikazi kukii-tender zeemiliyoni, amakhosikazi abe kwezo tender zeemiliyoni, angasabi abe ngabo abapha baphethe eza tender, besenza indlela, besenza everything, but abazoyenza loo nto with events that I'm listening kuzo in both these municipalities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other hands? No. And Sarah Padman is not in yet. Let me also comment to the presentations of the municipality, maybe to re-emphasize the points that were raised by the previous speaker, that as in our exercise of reviewing the Women's Charter, we would like to see the transformation taking place in municipalities, not only in municipalities, in provinces as well at the national level. By looking at the budget, is it gender sensitive, in the sense that when you talk of your supply chain tenders, how many women are beneficiaries? We're talking of this financial year of the municipality. How much did they benefit? 2, when you talk recruitments, We also want to see how is your structure as a municipality dealing with the issue of transformation. Do we have directors that are women? How many are they? If you only have one or two, this is your future plan as a municipality. So those things for us are very key because they show us your seriousness as municipalities on gender transformation. For instance, these two municipalities, Alfred Nzo as well as Ijokabi, there's high rate of child trafficking as well as forced marriages. In their program, especially the one that has presented, we have not had anything in line with what was presented by the Commission on Gender Equality. So those things are important to us, that you are having partnerships to deal with issues that are affecting women in your area of jurisdiction. We want to see the Jokabi having clear programs of dealing with child trafficking and also forced marriages. And when they report back again to us, those things must be clear with statistics. That would help us as members of parliament now to do our oversight, because all the reports that we are presenting here, they must help us as those people that are responsible for the oversight to go back and see what you have presented, it is happening. So if you are not giving us information clear for us to do our work, it becomes problematic. The other thing is that these reports, we need them from the political heads of the institution. They are the ones that are accountable. E-officials are accountable to the executive mayor, not to us. So that one must also be recorded in your minds, that when we call you, we really want you to present. And I'm worried, Deputy Chair, about the reports that we received from the Commission on Gender Equality and the magnitude of work that they are expected to do. For them to have only one legal person, which I am told they are sharing, and as well in each office of the province, they only have 4 staff members. And I'm just thinking about Eastern Cape. How vast is the Eastern Cape? What can they do with such personnel? So I think it's one of the things, as much as we are not evaluating them or else reviewing their structures, but it's a matter that we need to take it up for their effectiveness in terms of what they are expected to do. Can I then give it over to you, Honorable Deputy Chair? Because the 2 municipalities are not in yet when I look at my list of participants. Over to you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mrita. I must say that we've been through the country and we have concluded almost say 6.5 provinces, because we didn't do many things in the Western Cape because of the fact that we did it last year. So this year we did the 6 provinces, and I think we understand the issues of the rural nature of the province, as well as the fact that connectivity is always a challenge. So we will be having our high-level engagement with the provincial executive after today's event, and we appreciate the fact that Alfred Nzo particularly have indicated that they are going to send their presentation to our office. But I want to agree that municipalities should not do malicious compliance. We don't want them to come to the effect that they think they must report to us, so they must show us a report that doesn't actually have real content. It's not necessary. What we want is real content and how we are engaging with the women on the ground. I hope that the pandemic will give us early in the new year an opportunity to do physical visits to some of the districts that we could not engage through the virtual platform. We would really want to do that so that we can actually understand better what is happening. But I think the CGE as well as the FFC have indicated that these municipalities are having events. They doesn't necessarily have a program. And that is with this exercise, what we as Parliament have said, and the Women's Parliament, that was actually representatives from women from the ground, have said that we must build a culture where issues of women doesn't become Women's Day and other events, but it become a true issue that is part and parcel of our program to ensure gender equity and gender equality. So I think we have still got some work to do with regards to this process. And like I said, I had a discussion with the president of the ANC Women's League, and she, in actual fact, encouraged us to make sure that we assist what you have mentioned now of the Commission on Gender Equality, that we assist the commission and make sure that in our report we highlight the plight of the commission and other institutions that are besieged with the issues of women, gender-based violence and other issues. And it's clear from the report of the CGE that we need to make sure that we highlight their plight, and also make sure that from the side of Parliament, where we, with the Deputy Speaker, we are also meeting with the institution supporting the Constitution, and the CGE is part of that, that we need to have a more comprehensive discussion and approach with regards to the issues that they are highlighting. But with that said and done, I think we need to express our gratitude to the people, everyone, the delegates, the participants, as well as our presenters that have really came with us through this process up until today. We will still have the high level, 3 provinces, the high level discussion, but most importantly, on Friday, we will have the Law Reform Summit, where we will be engaging with all the different legal minds, as well as other stakeholders that are interested in addressing issues of policy and legislation, where we need to improve and where we actually have sufficient legislation and as well as policy to address the issues that we are speaking about. So we need to make sure that we are going to engage everyone. And this one of the law reform, we would really want members to participate. So as far as it is possible, the provincial legislatures, as well as our delegates and special delegates, as well as other NGOs and other community-based organizations, if they can participate in this law reform summit that we are going to have on Friday, we will make sure the link reach those that we feel that are actually our interested parties, so that we can have a very fruitful engagement, and so that we can be advised from the side of those that are legally minded, so that they will assist us to make sure that it is a complete and a comprehensive review of this Women's Charter, as well as the gender dispensation in the country, so that we can have a better understanding, the gender machinery, the national gender framework, and all of those that is important for us as women in South Africa in particular. I think in all the reports it's clear that who is the ones that are suffering hunger? It's women. Who is the ones that doesn't have someone that is at least earning some kind of income? That is women. And that is clear through the information that we got. Who is the ones that are suffering from physical violence, sexual violence, whoever? It is women. And that is why we've got a bigger responsibility to make sure that we still, even if we finalize the Women's Charter Review, that we don't cease to have this kind of engagements, not on a virtual platform necessarily, physically, also that we make sure that municipalities and district municipalities begin to take up their rightful responsibility to ensure that they engender their program, not only their budget, but also their program, so that they begin to understand who is the ones that is benefiting from decent sanitation, mostly women and children, because men are the ones that are, particularly Eastern Cape, that are working somewhere else in mines and wherever. Who is the ones that are benefiting from clean water? Who is the ones that are benefiting from decent shelter? If you look into the stats, it's clear the majority thereof is women. And who is the most poor? The majority thereof is women. Which means we've got a responsibility, and also the issue of education, a very important issue. Who is the ones that is more likely to have less access to education is women. Who is the one that is more likely to have less ownership of land? It is women. So that is why I'm saying that we still have a big responsibility, because clearly, us as government on all three spheres, we are not doing enough to make sure that we address the plight of women. So I just want to express my appreciation to all of the members, to all of those that have participated in this. And if there is any reports that you feel that we need to receive, please send it through. I'm sure that we in the chat room they have indicated what we need to be doing. And also to the Honorable Ngwita, thank you very much for the fact that you have been so efficient in assisting with the running of the program, and to all the other members in all the provinces that have done that. I must possibly say it because we will only be going back to provinces next year, besides the executive, the provincial executives that we are going to engage on a high level. And besides the law reform conference, I also, for those that are interested in economic oversight, we are going to have an economic oversight, and we will also send that information to those that are interested. Just indicate to us. And I think this was a very fruitful year for us. And I think we heard different views, and we think that the women of South Africa is the ones that will never disappoint you in making sure that they implement to the staff of Parliament, and to the communications team, to the office of the Deputy Chairperson, to the office of the Deputy Speaker, to all of those that have been supporting us. We want to say we appreciate you, and we are really grateful that we have got people that was so devoted to this program throughout. Ms. Monshu, sometimes people feel that why is she shunting us around, but it's because she wants our broadcasting to be successful. Also to our sign language interpreters, you've been part and part of us. We really want to say thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Botha. You were with us in Limpopo, and you are with us in the Eastern Cape. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I think Honorable Ngwita, I will give back to you to adjourn the session.
Yes. I would like to note in my adjournment of the meeting, I will please to please take note of the chat group comments, because some of them we may utilize them for our final report. Please, let's take care of them. Let me thank the only executive mayor as well that participated in this session, and I would say to him, please continue to support the program because it's so important. I know you are sensitive to that kind of a program. You even demonstrated in this meeting, and therefore the meeting is adjourned. Thank you to everyone.